This dog, I did this in-home lesson yesterday. This will be on the vlog that Paige puts out either today or tomorrow or something like that. This dog, Clark, right? So Clark did one-on-one lessons with us last year, right? With Matt, when Matt was with us, and crushed it. I mean, like he did really, really great, right? He's kind of like a big Doberman mix or something like that. Real strong, big dog, right? And owners are awesome. Like they bust their ass with this dog. They put in a lot of work, and they really weren't having very many issues. Like they reached out to me maybe a month ago just to do a refresher, not because of any major issues or anything, but they wanted to kind of take things to the next level with him, right? They said obedience is fantastic. He does really good with that. They said they want to figure out a way to more effectively be able to kind of socialize him with new people to help expand his world and like teach him to be a dog a little bit more, right? And they were just kind of uncomfortable on how to do that exactly because of some of his history of like, reactivity, a little bit of aggression, stuff like that, right? So we did a follow-up lesson with them, and we kind of got into everything. Everything looked pretty good, but they just wanted to know how to handle exactly having people come over. So we went over the house, and we just kind of broke that process down for them. And we were there for 40 minutes yesterday. Right. Wow. Not even very long, right?
Yeah.
Short and sweet, right?
Okay.
And I'll break down exactly how that session went, right? So first thing first, I always talk about with introducing your dog to people, our first step is making sure that we keep the dog in a controlled state of mind, away from all the action, to get them out of this state of mind of needing to like decide if the people are okay or not, or put them in a vulnerable position where they're going to react to begin with. So we always do a bed stay for that. Now, the reason why I like the bed stay, right, is because one, it establishes control as people are coming in, right? So people come in, the dog is on that bed stay, right? The dog is able to see the people, smell the person, smell the people, hear the people, like I was talking about, right? We're able to firmly correct for non-compliance of that to get the dog into an even more compliant state of mind if they're a little too distracted with stuff. And it gets them out of the position where most bad things happen, which is people are coming in, the dog's all amped up, he's running to the door, we're trying to hold the dog back, we're creating barriers, we're creating restraint, and then the dog can get, because they're in this elevated state of mind and they're suddenly meeting these new people and deciding if they're okay or not, it could turn into a problem there, right? So we did that first. He held that bed stay. We probably had him hold that bed stay for 15, 20 minutes, something like that, right? He broke it maybe one time, gave him a correction for it. And I always tell everybody, correct firm for that. So she gave him a correction for it, and he kind of cared about it, but he didn't really care that much about it, right? So I told her to jack that level up quite a bit more. She corrected one more time for him with it. He definitely cared about that correction, and you could see his entire state of mind shift when she did that. It went from, I'm on the bed, I really want to get off, I'm kind of concerned about those people over there, to like, whoa, oh, okay, I got to stay here, right? And he started focusing a little less on us, me and Paige were there, and focused a little bit more on his bed and stuff, right? Yeah. So we did that. We had him hold that for, like I said, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, which is generally the sweet spot for the amount of time it takes for the dog to kind of chillax a little bit, settle down into position, right? Had her put the muzzle on him. We talked a little bit about, all right, cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to test him a little bit with this bed stay, and I'm going to do things that your guests generally would do, right? So I kind of walked in, and I looked at him, and I smiled at him, and I'm like, oh, hey, bud, you're doing a good job holding your bed over there. And a lot of people would look at that as unfair, right? Here's why I think that step is important, right?
Okay.
One, people are going to do it anyways. When you have guests come over your house, your guests, even if you tell them ignore your dog, they're going to stare at your dog from across the room. They're going to say, oh, you're being so good over there, right? They're going to say little things like that and do little things like that that are going to entice your dog to get off. And we need to make sure that, one, the dog understands those aren't a cue to get off, because we're the one that put you there. We've got to be the one that's ultimately going to release you out of position. And two, we've got to make sure that our dog's attention is not too on the guests where they lose focus of the thing that we're asking them to do.
Yeah.
Right? So we tested it with that, right? Once we confirmed he wasn't going to break that, we talked about the next step, which is we're going to release him off, and I want to put him in a position where he could just freely move around, right? So she put the muzzle on him, she released him off, and what did he do? He kind of went and, they had kind of like an open concept area. We were sitting in the living room. He kind of like went off into the kitchen area, right? And just hung out there. And I let the owner kind of do this, and then I instructed her on why it was wrong. So Her initial reaction when he did that was she tried to kind of force him back into the area. She's like, come on, you're free. You could come over. You could hang out. You could interact. Right? To which I told her, I don't think that this dog thinks that he's not free right now. I think this dog is still a little bit overwhelmed by this situation and is choosing to make the correct choice of going off on his own, right? And hanging out and doing his thing, right? Deli does that shit all the time, right? Deli will if she gets a little tired or there's a lot going on or something like that, she'll go put herself in the other room or kind of separate herself from all of the commotion to help her like nervous system settle down a little bit. Right. And I could tell that's what this dog was doing. So we just let him hang out. And after a couple minutes, he kind of started coming around a little bit and sniffing and this and that. And he did it organically, right? Which is a very important part. You don't want to force the dog into the situation, because if you force the dog in the situation while they're trying to make the correct decision, he starts thinking, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to give myself space when I'm stressed out, which is absolutely the worst thing that you could possibly teach the dog, right? You want them to realize when they are off leash and you have all this space, this whole house everywhere, right? That if you get overwhelmed or stressed out, you could go elsewhere. You could do your thing, right? So did that for a little bit, kind of started breaking the ice, sniffing around and stuff like that. And we still totally ignored him, right? From there, we got into how do we actually interact with this dog if we want to, which I've said this a million times, but this is the key with it. And we saw it in real time. And like I said, you guys will see it on the vlog, but I'll explain it here too. So I always tell everybody, if you want to interact with one of my dogs, that's fine. But this is where giving the dog an opportunity to give a little bit of consent is important, right? So what did I do? I was like, all right, I want to interact with him right now. I called him over to me, right? I said, hey, come here, buddy, right? What did he do? He ran right over. Excited, tail's wiggling, I'm scratching his butt, I'm patting him, he's hanging out, he's like sitting at my foot, right? This is only my second time meeting this dog, right? We're hanging out. Things are great, right? I was like, this is awesome. I was like, if he wants to go away, I'm going to give him the ability to move away, obviously. I was like, but if he wants to sit here and get interaction the whole time, we're going to stack these wins of positive interactions with this dog, right? Interaction went great. A lot of the reason why I went great is because we went through all those steps I described so far. They went successfully. We gave him an opportunity to kind of decompress to the situation before we started the actual interaction with things. And then I gave him another break. I let him chill out for a minute, right? And then I told Paige, right? Paige is somebody totally new. She, looks weird. She's got the camera in her hand, big thing and stuff like that, right? So a lot of dogs are a little bit more spooked of her initially because of that, obviously. I told Paige, I was like, all right, Paige, well, now you're going to try to do the exact same thing, right? I put her to work a little bit. So she did the same thing. She called him over, and he came over, but you could see, right? You could see in his face, he was apprehensive. Right. He came over and he's just like, I'm not sure. Right. And like he went all the way over to her, which is consent. Right. He gave the consent. She started interacting with him. And you could tell after a couple of pets, he just kind of drifted away. He went away from her. Right. So what did he do? He made the correct choice. He said, I'm unsure about this person, so I'm going to go away. Right. And that right there, I told her, I was like, that is the most important thing. And that is what we want to reinforce. And we reinforce it by just leaving him alone, obviously, because what he wants is space. So by leaving him alone, he gets reinforced by getting the space and getting away from the thing he's apprehensive of. But I was like, that is so important, because here's the thing, right? When that situation happens, a lot of owners, and she was thrilled when she saw it. She's like, oh, that's great. He made the correct choice, right? Most owners look at it polar opposite, right? They create this picture in their head of what socialization should look like with their dog, right? And they think their dog should be just as excited to see every single person as he was to see me when I called him over to me, right? And they go, oh no, he's not acting the way that I want him to act. I was like, no, not to her, but to other people. I was like, he's acting exactly the way you want him to interact, to act, right? Which is, if you're uncomfortable and overwhelmed, go do something else. Dogs are going to get overwhelmed by things. Dogs are going to get uncomfortable by things. The problem does not lie in stress or anxiety or fearfulness. The problem lies in how the dog acts when they're in that state of mind. That is it, right? And that's what's wrong with this kind of force-free agenda and movement, right? Is that it's looking at behavioral issues from the lens of when dogs are scared of things, we have to make them not scared of things. Now, there's a healthy dose of that comes into play. I want him to not be so scared of people, obviously. But the problem is not that, because that lens would say that the dog should never be scared of anything, which is not real life. The dog should never get anxious of things. That's not real life. The dog should never get fearful of things. That's not real life, right? The lens we need to be looking at things from is when my dog gets anxious, nervous, or fearful, do they make the correct choice still? Right? Which is exactly what we saw that dog do, which is exactly what owners need to be looking for, so that when they see the dog make the correct choice when they're nervous, that they understand how to step in and advocate for the dog so that the dog continuously has positive interactions and is reinforced for their correct decisions, right? Because in that moment, the mistake 99% of people do is either one, they're petting the dog tries to slink away and they try to stop the dog from getting away. Big no-no, don't do that. Thing number two is after the dog slinks away, they try to beg the dog to come back to them, which just puts a ton of pressure on them. Or even worse, thing number three is the dog slinks away from them because they're apprehensive, and then they go and pursue the dog because they can't get past their own selfish desires of that dog should like me. Yeah. Right? So that was just so cool to see. And then we had just like this awesome conversation about it after, which is just like, she said, like, you know, I think Michelle and Bridget like did a podcast recently where they were talking about this idea of like, you know, we sometimes as an owner of a difficult dog, right? Or I hate even saying that. I hate even saying as the owner of a difficult dog, because really what it is as the owner of a, let me lens this out here. As the owner of a dog that doesn't act to the norm that society has created, I feel like is the better way of putting it. Because this dog in question right now that we're talking about is not really a difficult dog. Right? Like, it wouldn't really be that hard of a dog to own if I owned him, or she doesn't really have massive issues with this dog at this point or anything. You needed training to help her to be able to manage him, obviously. And before that, he might have been a little difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
But most dogs prior to training are pretty difficult, right?
Yeah.
So she said, you know, the hardest thing about owning a dog like that, right, is being able to relinquish this picture you have in your head of what your dog should be like and accepting your dog for who they are, right? And it's funny. You could equate this to like kid shit, right? Like, and really the most dysfunctional family relationships are the ones pertaining to like, you've got the dad who for 4 generations has been fucking shoemakers. They've been cobblers, right?
Okay, yeah.
And the son is not interested in the shoe cobbling business. But in your mind, you were going to have this son so he could take over your shoe cobbling. Is it shoe cobbling? I know it's a cobbler, but do you say shoe cobbling?
I just think cobbler. Just say cobbler.
Cobble shoes. Yeah. The son has no interest in cobbling shoes, right? Right. And you just, that was in your mind, and you just have such a hard time letting go of the fact that your son is an individual and is interested in different things than you're interested in, and probably doesn't like certain things that you really like. And unless you could accept them for who they are, you are going to have a shit relationship with them long term. Right. It's the same. It really is kind of the same shit. Yeah. Right.
Like every Disney Pixar movie. Come on.
Isn't that kind of what it is?
Yeah, you guys see it.
So it's just interesting, right? Like I look at situations like that, and we ended it so early because we had such a positive experience. Like, that was such a positive win of a situation, right? We had people come over. He doesn't really get to interact with people very often, and we had one person that he interacted with that it went phenomenally with. He really enjoyed it, which is a huge win, which was with me. And he had one person where he was curious and went to go interact and realized he wasn't ready for it, went somewhere else, and we were able to reinforce that excellent decision that he made of going and doing something else as opposed to reacting like he generally would in the past. 2 massive fucking wins. I was like, we're ending it on that. I was like, that is a great fucking note to end on.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of, I mean, that's how that one went.